Hello and welcome to another episode of the League One Lowdown here on the Deck Network. As always, you're joined by me, Callum, and Sam. We're actually recording this in the evening for once, Sam. Good evening, Sam.
Good evening, my friend. How are we?
Yeah, not too bad. Busy week this week, so we'll get onto that in a minute. But yeah, busy week this week, so I've not been over the football too much, and probably a good thing looking at our predictions league, Sam, which hasn't gone too well for me in recent nights. I think I got one over you last night, but
Yeah.
Saturday was a bit of a whitewash.
Yeah, it actually makes a change on my behalf because I've been pretty torrid the past sort of 15 match days. So in total on Saturday, I got 5 correct outcomes and a correct score. It's 3 points obviously for the correct score and then 1 point for the correct outcomes. And then on the Tuesday night, I got 3 correct outcomes and 1 correct score, which gave me a total from last week of 165 points. And then Callum, you only got 2 correct outcomes on the Saturday. Probably your worst performance of the season,
That
shall we say.
that is poor, yeah.
But you redeemed yourself last night with 4 correct outcomes and a correct score. So in total, you're now on 177. So the gap has narrowed from 17
Narrowed
points
by 5
to
points,
12.
yeah.
So the battle for the Lincoln Orient shirt at the end of the season has narrowed a little bit, but you're still sitting pretty comfortably, shall we say?
I was looking at our charity shirt the other day, and it's scarily like if that had a Leyton Orient badge on it, it genuinely wouldn't surprise me. So you might have next year's Leyton Orient shirt if you have to buy the Lincoln charity shirt. So there you go. There was, as we were recording this on Wednesday night, some League One action yesterday. Now, I'll have to be honest with you, I have not really been in the loop with League One football. I've been very busy with bits and stuff outside of podcasting, which probably isn't very good of me, but I can still see what it does to the League One table and stuff like that. So don't worry, I'll still probably have strong opinions on stuff that I don't know, which pretty much sums up football. But yeah, we'll start for Mansfield, and I have got the form table in front of me, courtesy of our friends of soccerstats.com. This podcast is not sponsored by them, but if they would, that'd be great. We use you a lot. But Mansfield, bottom of the form table of the last 6 games. I think they're bottom of the form table pretty much all of the form tables at the minute. Really not going their way at the minute. Another defeat last night, Sam, as well.
Yeah, 100%. I don't think injuries are helping them at the moment. Injuries, especially in the defensive department, shall we say. Billy Cargill, Fraser Blake Tracy, Deji Oshalaja, Matthew Craig, and Lee Gregory, all injured for Mansfield. Obviously, Lee Gregory got injured in their last game, but he is their top goal scorer. Will Evans started on the bench. They didn't start Bacchus, who's been in and out of the team a bit recently. 6 defeats in a row for Mansfield is rather worrying, but they started the season like a house on fire, so they're still pretty comfortable in mid-table. But if you, like you say, they're bottom of the form table in the last 6. In the last 10, they're 20th. There's, thankfully for them, 4 worse teams than them in the past 10 games. But I still believe they'll be okay come the end of the season. I think they've got enough firepower, especially going forward. Last night was just a completely off night for them. It looked like everything had just kind of caught up with them in the end, especially defensively. They were pretty shambolic. Nigel Clough, thankfully, or to be fair to him, was very complimentary of how good Orient were, who we're going to talk about a bit later on, so we're not going to gloss on them at the moment. But I think if you still offer Mansfield fans mid-table at the start of the season, I'm pretty sure they'd have probably taken that stability season in League One. Like a lot of League Two clubs coming up, they either perform really well, like your Stockports, your Wrexhams. They could perform really badly, like your Crawleys, and then you've got your Mansfield just comfortable in mid-table. They don't do anything flashy, but they're a pretty solid team. While their form's worrying, I'm sure they'll be fine by the end of the season.
That's the thing, though. You want your form to pick up by the end of the season, so you're not going into next year on the tail of some bad form. Kind of the opposite of bad form. Bristol Rovers, they're a side that are at the bottom, the 19th in the league, just 5 points from safety, but 8th in the form table. But because of the good form that the other teams have been in around them and below them in the relegation zone, with the notable exception of Peterborough and probably Cambridge United, they needed that point, didn't they, against Stockport, which, again, is a good result considering where Stockport are in the table.
100%. And going off my match momentum chart I have in front of me, they weren't actually battered the entire game either. They had their fair share of chances, especially towards the end of the first half. Inigo Calderon's gone in. He's pretty much stabilised the club, I think. Obviously, he's never managed a first team before, being a youth team at Brighton. Defensively, he has shored them up a little bit. 3 wins in their last 6, drawing last night. That could be a big point come the end of the season. It's all got extremely congested at the bottom end now of the table. I think it's 6 points separating them, 5 points separating them and Shrewsbury and Crawley, who obviously got a win last night. They're above Peterborough, level on points now with Exeter, who, despite their excellent performance last night in the FA Cup against Crystal Palace, are dwindling down the table. Northampton, who we'll talk about in a bit, have obviously picked up with 2 wins in a row. It's all become extremely congested, though. I think you're probably looking Northampton downwards for the bottom of the league. I think we've both said that Shrewsbury will pick up, especially under Gareth Ainsworth. We didn't expect Burton to pick up as they have, but fair play to Gary Bowyer and everyone at Burton Albion. So yeah, it could be a very, very big point come end of the season, especially for with your new signing, Sil Swinkles getting a goal as well, especially as centre half. That can always nice to see your January signings get going, shall we say?
One of those sides, Crawley, picking up 3 points. 2 late goals actually in this game. Junior Quintana and Doyle, 94th minute goal, putting the cherry on top. That's thrown them. I could have sworn they've been 21st and now they're down to 22nd because of the good form of Burton and Shrewsbury. We'll talk about Posh in a minute, but they're 3 points from safety, and that, like you say, it is tightening up at the bottom, which is what we've needed, to be honest, because we've always been we've been waiting for this relegation battle to happen, and it's not happened, but it is now.
Yeah, and it was a mightily impressive performance, shall we say, from Crawley, because we know Stevenage aren't the most explosive side. They don't score many, but they very, very rarely concede many. But going away to Crawley, conceding 3, other than the last 15 minutes, Crawley were the much better side, 2.25 XG from Crawley Town, which is one of their best this season as well. 2 wins in 4 has put them within touching distance of staying up. To be fair to Rob Elliott, he's done a pretty decent job. He's lost, obviously, he came in after, Lindsay did his magic last year, still lost some key players in January. They obviously recruited a lot of loanees in, and it would have been very easy for them after what happened on Saturday against Bolton to kind of go into their shell and have a really poor night against Stevenage. As we know, Stevenage are one of them sides you don't particularly want to play against when you're up in the doldrums, so to speak, because Stevenage are so good at grinding out results. But Stevenage had an off night. Crawley Town punished them. And it could be another. We're getting to the point of the season now where every point is going to be vital. We've got 16 games left, the final third of the season. So it could be a massive 3 points come end of the season, and could set them up for a much better end to the season.
And a point that has put Shrewsbury 21st and in prime position to overtake Peterborough, maybe even this weekend. Unlikely with the goal difference, but Shrewsbury, yeah, they're not doing too bad. Another point.
Yeah, 100%. And they, by all accounts, they probably were the better team at Reading with the better chances. Gareth Ainsworth doing what Gareth Ainsworth does, making a side extremely hard to beat. Only 2 defeats in their last 6, and they're both by the single goal as well. So, I mean, points will keep them up. But Taylor Perry 2 in 2 for him. He's starting to find his form. He seems to have got a consistent selection as well, which is probably helping. But we know what Gareth Ainsworth sides do. They're extremely hard to beat. They're extremely hard working, and I still don't doubt that they won't stay up. Reading is an extremely difficult place to go to. One of the best home forms in the league. So a massive point for Shrewsbury Town.
I mean, we could talk about Posh for the whole podcast. We genuinely could do a whole podcast on Peterborough. There's so many words that we could probably use to describe them at the minute. But the biggest talking point for them at the minute is we always used to say they were bipolar. They were always, they were scoring and they were conceding. That scoring has rather abruptly stopped in recent weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So if you go for the last 10, they're the worst team in terms of the form table. Worse than Cambridge on goal difference. So we were always renowned for Stevenage for being this high-scoring team, especially in the first sort of half of the season. They were top goal scorers, but had the worst defence. They've only scored 8 goals in their last 10 games, which is the same as Northampton have, but Northampton have won them 2 games extra. So Peterborough, in their last 10 games have won 1, drew 3, lost 6, scored 8 and conceded 20, averaging 2 goals conceded per game. It didn't help last night. I think it was on, it must have been last night when they played, conceding extremely late to Charlton. Emmanuel Fernandez, who was linked all January of going away, getting sent off. They just can't seem to grind out a result, Peterborough. And I wish I listened to Ferguson's interview before I jumped on, but it just seems, his position just seems untenable. I don't understand how.
Well, there doesn't seem to be any pressure on him at all.
No.
But at least externally, yeah.
He's had that dreaded vote of confidence, hasn't he, from Darren McAntony, in terms of I see what I'm seeing on the pitch in terms of better performances and stuff like that. But I'm not seeing it now. Like,
coming from on that, no.
If we're going off the expected point, my famous expected points table, they are 14th. They've got 10 less points than they should have, apparently, because they've conceded 13.5 goals more than they should have.
But expected points and points, the two different things, aren't you? If you don't have the players to grind out those results, you're gonna flop, aren't you? And it says something that you've had a player who, like you say, was linked heavily with a move out, getting a red card, and then 10 men is hard to play, but then conceding in the 89th minute, that sums it up, doesn't it? Really, you don't have the players that can grind out results at all, and it's just worrying, isn't it?
No, I think it's it's probably part of their recruitment policy, isn't it? We've always renowned them for dipping into non-league, picking up these little gems. You could use Ephraim Mason-Clark as an example, Dwight Gale, Ivan Toney, all these players they buy from smaller clubs and develop them and sell them on. Maybe they've gone a bit too far this time. Like they lose Johnson Clark-Harris, who, by all accounts, is one of the top scorers in League One history in the past 10 years. You don't replace him with a recognised number. Now, you bring in Ricky J. Jones from Youth Academy, fine. We know Ricky J. Jones has quality. Obviously, the injury to Poku probably hasn't helped them going forward. I mean, he was the third, I believe he still is the third top goal scorer in the league with 15. So that doesn't help. But it's the same as what I say about some Premier League managers. They're unwilling to adapt from their philosophy. It's all well and good being this brilliant possession attacking football team. But if you're not getting results, you need to adapt. Football, at the end of the day, is about results, especially when you're in Peterborough's position now. If Peterborough were to go down to League Two, it would probably be one of the biggest shocks I'd have seen in League One for a very long time. In terms of a relegated team.
What sums the whole situation up, and it's a stat that I quite like, is opponents' points per game. I look at that last 10 form table that you were referring to earlier, Peterborough, bottom of it. Their opponents' points per game has been 1.51. Shrewsbury, in that same period, have scored 15 points to Peterborough's 6, and their opponents' points per game has been 1.55. So Shrewsbury have had harder games and got 2.5 times as many points. And that, to me, sums up, one, the effect of a manager that's willing to stand by his players, and two, the mentality that you need to stay up. League One is, we saw it with, I don't want to say we saw it with Leicester, but to me it's the same thing. It's this mindset of, our club is too big to go down. This is football. It's for as much as we say it's about money, it's also a meritocracy. If you don't have the results, you will be punished, and Peterborough don't have it.
No, 100%.
Which I mean, we could talk for ages about Peterborough, so we're going to move on. We should just say a point apiece for Rotherham and Blackpool. That game, definitely, not surprisingly, a 0-0. I don't know how I didn't see that one coming. And Birmingham 4-0 against Cambridge United. They have now got a 7-point lead at the top of the table with a game in hand. That'll soon be 10. You'd imagine they'll win the game in hand. That's their 20th win of the season. Yeah, no offense, but they're going to, we're seeing that money in that. I don't want to say, well, it is sort of squad depth in it, but just quality of players. They're just, if they want to rotate a squad for whatever reason they can, and that's what money gets you. They are going to get the 100 points, and it's now Birmingham's to lose, isn't it? Really, I mean, it always was, but anyway. Let's move on to talking about the games that are coming, and annoyingly, we're going to start with Birmingham. Having just said everything about Birmingham, we're going to move on to them. 20 league games won. unbeaten since the 23rd of November, doing quite well in the EFL Trophy. Obviously, we saw they nearly took Newcastle all the way in the FA Cup as well. I mean, we can run out of... I kind of want to park the Birmingham part of this conversation and focus more on Charlton. Everyone knows what we've got to say about Birmingham, but Charlton, they've really crept under the radar. Third in the form table for the last 10. If we make that the last 6, they go up to second, just behind Birmingham. Both have got 16 points in their last 6 games, although Birmingham's opponents have been a bit trickier. The one thing I'll say about Charlton is what that opponent's points per game suggests. Yes, they're 5th in the table. They've played a game more than 2 of the teams below them, but whatever. They're 5th in the table. Great. The teams they've played aren't. They're not their playoff rivals. Maybe you could consider Blackpool a playoff rival, but not really. I'm still waiting to see a big result from Charlton. If does that make sense? I don't know if that's a bit harsh on them.
You're waiting for kind of like the 3 or 4-0 from Charlton.
Yeah. I'm waiting for a result that catches my eye. So far it's been, I mean, don't get me wrong, you don't need that. If you win every game 1-0, you're going to end the season with a 100% record. I mean, look at Juventus. I think they've only just lost their first game of the season, but they were still... But anyway, that was beside the point. Charlton, I'm yet to be wowed by them, but they're in the playoffs, so I can't really hold that against them.
Yeah, and obviously we were criticising them. I think it was just before Christmas, wasn't it? We were going, oh, Charlton are 17th. What's going to happen with them? The last 10 games, like you've already mentioned, they're 3rd in the form table. They've won 5 of their last 6. You could even stretch that to 7 of their last 10 with 2 draws. 17 goals scored, 1 conceded per game. They have slowly gone about and quietly gone about their business of Charlton. And like you said, they're not an explosive team. They win 2-0. They win 1-0. But that's an epiphany of what a Nathan Jones team was when he was at Luton. They just quietly go about their business. They win 1 or 2-0. No one really makes a noise about them until they get 3rd, maybe 4th, and then people start noticing them. The reason they probably got a bit better is they've now got a striker in Matty Godden, who's now got 4 in 4. It probably helps your cause having a goal-scoring striker. Rather interestingly, 13 of their 40 goals have also been from set pieces this season. So lots of work going on the training pitch, and set pieces, especially in the modern game, have become a rather big factor.
That's the thing with Charlton. I'm sure we were saying this time last year that they were drawing a lot of games. I seem to remember towards the tail end when Nathan Jones came in last time, they were drawing a lot of games.
Yep.
And I think that, like you say, you put your finger on it, Matty Godden, and they've got that in-form striker, which, you know, they probably didn't have. You know, they probably had a striker with quality, but they didn't have that in-form striker. And now they've got it, and they seem to be going about their business quietly and getting those, you know, like it is an 89th minute winner. You know, okay, it's a poor Peterborough side, but that's 3 points on the table, isn't it? So on this one, I'm kind of stumped because Charlton have it in them to make this a really boring game, I think. But it is just the sheer quality of Birmingham. It like they do have quality. You know, you look at the top goal scorers. You've got Alfie May joint 6th with 10 goals this season, and you got Jay Stansfield with a goal for every £1 million spent on him so far, 15 this season. So, yeah, I'm stumped with this one. I kind of back Birmingham with their quality and that home advantage as well. You know, it's a big stadium. Is it still called St Andrews, or has it been given some sort of sponsorship name? I'll go with 2-1 Birmingham.
Okay. And what I will say about Birmingham, I've got in my notes, is they're actually unbeaten at home with 11 wins and 3 draws. And a little comparison stat. So on this date, I haven't done games. On this date in 2022, Rotherham had 65 points and didn't obviously go on to break the record. Plymouth had 64 points, but had played 2 games more. And that was when they got 100. I think they got 100 or they got 99 in 2020. Yeah. I think it was, or 2023. Yeah. And then when Wolves got the record points in 2014, Wolves only had 61 points after 21 games. So Birmingham have 5 points more, and have played a game less. So there is every opportunity for Birmingham to go on to break the record. Their next 5 games are obviously interesting. They've got Charlton at home, Reading away, Orient at home, Wycombe at home, and Bolton away. So some big, interesting fixtures coming up. And the last meeting in the last 13 meetings between the sides, there has only been more than 2 goals, so 3 goals or more, on one occasion, which was in 2015. And Charlton obviously won the reverse fixture, which was Birmingham's first defeat of the season. I think this is a really tough game to call. But I will go with 2-0 to Birmingham City.
Interesting. Let's move on then to Barnsley against Huddersfield. Barnsley, I don't really know what to think about them at the minute. They're kind of fallen away. They were in what I would say is probably the strongest position, really, and they just seem to have thrown that all away. And talking about throwing that all away, Huddersfield seem to be doing exactly the same thing. You don't really know what to think about this with 2 teams that are just completely out of form. They're just as bad as each other. I thought, well, Huddersfield have got 1 more point, and by that I mean Huddersfield have got 2 points in the last 5. Barnsley got 1.
Yeah, 2 teams who expected to be in the top 6 at the start of the season, I believe. They haven't really got going, Huddersfield, since they signed Joe Taylor, Dion Charles. Dion Charles, I believe, scored in his first game. Then Joe Taylor got injured, as we mentioned last week. And I saw some Huddersfield fans exactly echoing what you said in terms of why are you giving the striker who's literally played no football 90 minutes immediately and his hamstring goes bang, and everyone's wondering why. I believe their other
physio team about that. It's just terrible. Yeah.
I believe Ruben Ruxon, their other new signing, also has been injured. But they're now sitting 15th in the form table in the last 10. Everyone was thinking, oh, right, we've now got to top 4 and we're going to break away. You've got Huddersfield, you've got Wrexham, you've got Wycombe, and you've got Birmingham, and you're all expecting them to kind of just continue building on that little bit of pressure they're putting on each other and pull away from the rest. But that's not happened. Huddersfield are now just inside the playoff places, 2 points clear of Leyton Orient in 6th place. No win in 5. They have got the 5th best away form is 6 wins, 3 draws and 4 losses. But we've banged on about Barnsley's home form all season. 16th in the form table in the last 10 games. No win in 5, 4 defeats and a draw. And they've got the 15th best home record with 4 wins, 6 draws and 5 defeats. There was obviously a lot of, if you watched our deadline day stream, we had Seb pop on just as Barnsley sold Ben Killick. And he was as confused as I think the whole Barnsley fan base when they let their main, who was at the time their main goalkeeper, go. They then let Lofthouse go. They let Sam Cosgrove go. And then they got an unknown, untested 2nd division French striker in who had 4 goals in 19 appearances. So there's a lot of confusion around what's going on, especially behind the scenes at Barnsley, which can't be helping them on the pitch. So 2 teams devoid of confidence. It's a big game for both teams, especially Barnsley, who are ever drifting away from the playoffs, now 6 points off the playoffs. And it's important that Huddersfield get back on the right track. I think Huddersfield will win 2-1.
I've gone with 1-1. The one word I kind of wanted to float about here, and Barnsley and Huddersfield Town fans might lose it with me here, but do you think there's a sense of, I don't want to say arrogance, but complacency? Do you think these are 2 sides that coming into this season kind of just expected, Huddersfield expected to fight for the title, and Barnsley fans would have expected, well, not fans, but Barnsley players, because it's not the fans, is it? It's the players that would have expected that, and they've kind of complacently gone about it, and now that it's a bit more of a dogfight than they expected, they're not up for it. That's I have to kind of think psychologically, because we know the players that both of these teams have got, and they're capable players, and I'd argue they're probably both playoff sides. But if the performance and the mentality is not there, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think Huddersfield probably had an expectation on them to get top 6. Especially from the fans. But I said at the start of the season, and I'm sure we can go back and find it, my main concern with Huddersfield was they didn't do enough business, especially in the summer, and there was still that losing culture at the club. They had 3-4 pretty poor seasons in the Championship. They've come down, not really overhauled the squad, and if they go on a little run like this, there's no reason there's not. I don't know if there's that mindset in the club to get over this, if that makes sense, and
Yeah.
it just continues spiraling until they eventually play a team with superiorly less quality. Like, no offense to these clubs, and Northampton, for example, and they beat them, and then they go on a little run again. And I think it is the same for Barnsley, but I think off the field issues probably have hampered Barnsley a lot more, especially with their recruitment being so poor this summer and in January.
Like it's just things like going into work and just like like for example, the kit man's just a bit down, and then that infiltrates into the play. We forget that footballers are people, and they can be affected by that sort of thing. So that's why I kind of float the idea, and perhaps it's given us a great title. But we'll move on from that. Bristol Rovers versus Burton. Talk about dogfight. This one really, really interesting game. Obviously, Bristol Rovers 5 points above safety, but we definitely know we're in that battle. Burton are 4 points from safety. Sorry, I should say Bristol Rovers 5 points above safety. Burton 4 points from safety. Burton unbeaten in their last, I want to say 5, maybe 6 games, or probably longer than that. I only have the five last games in front of me, but they're doing incredibly well. I kind of back Burton on this one. I know they've kind of let their foot off the pedal recently with back-to-back draws against Blackpool and Barnsley, but they're 2 tough games, really tough games. And Bristol Rovers, as always, we say inconsistent. Won, lost, won, drew. You don't need to be. Completely depends what Bristol Rovers side turns up, I think.
Yeah, they're unbeaten in their last 3 at home, 2 wins and a draw. Both games they lost were both away. For Burton in the form table in the last 10, they're 11th. 4 points from safety, as you've mentioned, but they're 5th in the form table in the last 6. The form of Burrell and Bodvarsson has massively helped them. I rated Burrell when he came in. He got like 30 odd goals for Cove Rangers last year, and he just needed, I think the faith from the manager was a lot of chopping and changing at the start of the season. He's now got a partner who's experienced at League One level. He's a kind of like a old school centre forward is Bodvarsson. He takes the hits from the centre half. He does the channel running, which probably helps somebody like Burrell. In terms of home form, Bristol Rovers have won 6, drew 4, and lost 4. So they're pretty decent team at home. And Burton's away form is 2 wins, 7 draws, and 5 losses. It's a must not lose game, I think, for Bristol Rovers. Because if Burton win, then they're like 3 points off them. So then it's like a bit more. Then that fear of dropping into the bottom 4 comes back into Bristol Rovers' mind when they've got on a little run, especially at home. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in this one.
I've gone 2-1 to Burton, probably against my better judgment, but I have gone 2-1 to Burton. I like you say, there's just something about Burton. You can just see them getting out of it. Not again. I don't want to say not skills based, but just purely vibes, and they've done it for the last couple of seasons. So why not? Why not do it again? On to I feel like we should do a whole episode on Lincoln story because we could probably both talk about it for a while. I'm going to sum it up quite quickly and just say I think you walk this. There is very little about Lincoln at the minute that strikes me as a team that can pose a threat to anyone. The only sort of hope I've got is Lincoln are much better when they play a side that prefers the ball and you prefer the ball. But like we were talking off mic, your manager is one that has brains and knows that Lincoln don't like having the ball, so therefore will give Lincoln the ball. So I will, I'll say 2-1 to Orient on this one. I can see James Collins maybe getting a goal. He's the only sort of in-form player, with the exception of O'Connor as well. But I don't think I can see that being a consolation goal. I can't see us posing much of a threat.
Well, Orient haven't beaten Lincoln since 23rd of October 2004. That was the last time Orient beat Lincoln. If Orient fans, if you're here, leave what you think the score was in the comments, because I wouldn't have got that. The last 6 meetings between the sides, 3 draws, 3 1-all draws in a row, a 1-0 loss for Orient, a 1-0 loss for Orient, and a 2-1 loss for Orient. So there's never
Yeah.
really many goals when we play each other. Obviously, we are the most informed team in the league in the last 10. We've got Dan Adji back. We've signed Randall Williams, who got a beautiful goal last night. Romani Evans-Green looks solid on his debut. Ollie O'Neill's a couple of weeks back. We have near enough a fully fit squad now, other than Jordan Graham and Theo Archibald. Defensively, other than probably Birmingham and potentially Charlton, we look unbelievable. We don't really look like conceding. Keeley has, I think it's 15 clean sheets in 19 League One games, which is unbelievable. We are a team. I expected us to improve. I said for a long time, even when we were pretty poor, like in poor form, the performances never got the results they deserved. And since then, since that FA Cup Keeley goal, we've been unstoppable. We've only lost one game in the league, which was to Stockport. And I still believe Stockport may win the playoffs. I think they're an extremely good side. But we look good. We've got freshness. Other than having another second number 9, we just look a really good team, especially going forward, which is not something I normally say about us. And I do think Orient will win. While Lincoln have had the week off, I think with the amount of rotation we can now do with the squad we've got, I'm not overly concerned with your threats now. Like I remember watching the game earlier in the season when we lost 2-1. Both your goals were from counter-attacks, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. And while we go a lot more man-to-man now. So if you leave, we go 1v1 basically. So we trust our defenders to do their jobs, which could pose a threat. But I don't think you've got as much pace in the side as you once did either.
No, not at all.
So I think Orient will win 2-0.
Yeah. The only reason I say 2-1, I just think we've got a set-piece goal in us, but I can't see it coming from merit or anything. Lincoln's not a great club to support at the minute. There's a lot of... It's kind of come from nowhere as well, but there's a lot of, I don't want to say animosity in the fan base, but a lot of people not very happy at the moment. So, but let's move on to a brighter subject of Northampton against Wrexham. Is that a brighter subject? Northampton 17th, Wrexham 3rd. Wrexham, for looking at their last 5 games, how they're still 3rd in this league probably points to how bad the form of Huddersfield has been and the gap that once existed to Stockport. But Wrexham, 1 loss, drew, lost 1. So who knows what that pattern is. Northampton won their last 2 games. I've kind of gone for a Wrexham win. They've just got the quality. I've gone 3-1 to Wrexham in this one.
Okay, I've gone different. I've gone for a 1-1 draw. Wrexham's form is extreme. I know Wrexham have bought a lot of firepower in January. But I've criticised Northampton quite a lot this season. I've said they're a pretty poor side. But they've won their last 2. And to be fair, they've been pretty decent in them 2 wins. And I just think Wrexham are not a very good side away from home. They're excellent at home. I think they're the best team other than Birmingham at home in the league. But I just think there's something about Northampton. I'm pretty sure Northampton got a result against Birmingham away. I just think there's something about Northampton in these bigger games where they can just nick a point against these sort of sides. Wrexham will also play to Northampton's strengths instead of... They're not a possession-based side, Wrexham. They get the ball forward quite quickly, which suits a physical side like Northampton. So I think it'll be a 1-1 draw.
Interesting. Let's move on to Blackpool against Mansfield. Blackpool, who... It's a weird stat, isn't it? They're unbeaten in 9, but they've only picked up, 13
7
points.
Draws. Yeah, 7
They've
draws.
got 13 points, which is... It's a really weird way of going unbeaten, isn't it?
Very.
Mansfield, we've touched on them. They're really, really in the doldrums, and I think this game will kind of add to that. I think it'll be 1-0 to Blackpool. They're a side that I don't want to say they don't score much because they've scored the same as Barnsley and they've scored more than Lincoln, but recently they've not been free scoring. They've scored 2 against Charlton, 1 against Burton, and then didn't score against Rotherham. I've gone 1-0 on this one to Blackpool.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Blackpool's home form. They've won 2, drew 9, and lost 2. That's their home record this season.
That is really weird. And it's good, but it's also bad.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Brucey's gone in and made them extremely difficult to beat, which is a bit of a trait that Nathan Jones did last year.
Yeah.
And they have crept up the table. They're still 9 points off the playoffs, but there's always that one team that kicks into gear in these last sort of 15 sort of games. Mansfield have got a lot of injuries, as we mentioned earlier, and I kind of agree with you, but I'm going to go for 2-0 to Blackpool.
I just think Mansfield, that when a side is low on confidence, it takes something special to bring them out of it. So, we'll see. Crawley against Wycombe. It's kind of the outskirts of London derby, this one, which is a really weird thing to call a match, but there you go. The commuter towns derby. There we go. Don't know if that's a compliment or not. I just Wycombe have got the quality here, haven't they? They're second in the league. Okay, that only won 2 of the last 4, but the other 2 are draws. So you can with football you can phrase stats however you want, can't you? Really, Crawley, they've won 2. They've won the same amount of games in the last 4 as Wycombe have, but they lost the other 2. So you can phrase stats however you want, but I just think, only 2 sides, I think, in the whole league have conceded more goals than Crawley, and I can kind of see Wycombe. We know the firepower they've got, so I'll go 3-1 to Wycombe.
I think this is actually quite an interesting game, just purely because Wycombe haven't. We said it in the transfer review episode last week, how many signings Wycombe make and how quickly they all gel together, as well as a new manager. And they drew with Cambridge last time out away from home. Crawley are going to be on the back of a really nice victory against a very difficult side. Like you say, the Wycombe have a lot of firepower, have scored 35 goals away from home as well, which is unbelievable, really. I think this will be 3-2 to Wycombe.
I will just say with Wycombe, I don't want to say the worrying thing is, but other than Richard Kone, their top goal scorers are Luke Leahy, Labala, and Onyedima with 6. So there's a bit of a gap between. So if Kone has an off day, which granted isn't very often given he's the top goal scorer, but if he has an off day, Wycombe will be in trouble. Reading against Rotherham, then the 9th against 14th. So if Reading don't get a result here, I think they are in trouble of kind of slipping into mid-table.
Yeah.
But I think, given what we know about both of these sides, this has a 1-1 draw, if not 0-0 draw, written all over it. Personally.
Well, you say that Reading have only drawn 1 game at home all season, and that was last time out. 10 wins, 1 draw, 3 losses at home, but they've only won 1 of their last 7 in the league. Reading. We all thought Rotherham would have this second half spurt. Since then, since they had that little run of no defeat in 5, they've won 1 in their last 5.
Yeah.
So
as soon as we started praising Rotherham, they've dropped off a cliff. So
I'm going to agree with you on this one. I will go 1-1. I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah, that's tough. Shrewsbury versus Bolton. If ever a game had the ingredients of a Shrewsbury Town win, to me, this has it. This plays perfectly into Shrewsbury's hand. It's Bolton who have a chance to get into the playoffs if results go their way. It's Shrewsbury, a side who, with 3 points, could be on the verge of getting out of the relegation zones if scorelines go their way, even out of it. This to me has all the cards of a 2-1 Shrewsbury Town over it.
I like your point because they're at home as well. And Bolton would obviously be a bit deflated after going out the EFL trophy, a chance to go into Wembley, a competition I believe they had won a couple of years ago. Away forms with 6 wins, 2 draws, 6 defeats for Bolton. Shrewsbury aren't a bad side at home. And like you say, Gareth Ainsworth. I'll go for a draw. 1-1 draw.
Yeah. Interesting. The battle of what I'm going to call the East Coast Mainline derby. Stevenage against Peterborough. The stops next to each other on the East Coast Mainline. But surprisingly far apart, having driven the A1 quite a lot recently. really weird knowledge there. I can just see Stevenage grinding out a 1-0 here. This just feels really, really Stevenage to me. It's perfect for them.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Stevenage will win. I've gone for 2-1. I think Stevenage will be pretty annoyed about their performance at Crawley. Returning home, we all know how bad Peterborough have been recently. 2 wins away from home all season, 31 goals conceded away from home, which is only worsened by Crawley and Cambridge away from home, who have done 32 and 33 respectively. So 2-1 for Stevenage.
Next up, penultimate game is Wigan against Stockport. Wigan, who are 16th. I would genuinely probably put a fiver on them staying 16th. It feels about right for them this year. I don't think they're close enough. I'd say Northampton are the ones looking over their shoulders. Wigan have never really been that side, but they've also never been looking forward, really, Wigan, this season. Stockport, great form, one of the form sides in the league. They've got the quality to take this over the line. I've gone 2-0.
Yeah, I've gone for 3-1 to Stockport.
I just think, yeah.
I've been obviously very complimentary of Stockport all season, and still by my expected points table, they are still top.
So yeah, they're doing all right, Stockport, aren't they? I feel like it's a weird season. We mentioned Mansfield would have been happy with mid-table, but when you look at Wrexham and Stockport, 3rd and 4th, you can't help but be disappointed, can you? But there's levels in this game, I suppose. And on to what I'm going to probably call it's an important game at the bottom of the table, because Cambridge could really risk being cut adrift at the bottom. Exeter need a result to kind of steady the ship because they're also in terrible form. But I don't know whether it's the fact that I'm not really interested in either of these sides towards the bottom of the table, but this just has a game that has 0-0 written all over it. Like, I cannot see either side having the quality to get 3 points.
This is either going to be one of them games that is 0-0 or it's a really high scoring, isn't it?
It's either going to be absolutely crazy or 0-0.
Yeah, Exeter haven't won in their last 8, and they've lost 6 of those. And like we've mentioned, they are the team that look like they could get and have been dragged into this rather quickly.
Oh yeah,
they're 11 points with Bristol Rovers, just the 5 points clear off Shrewsbury, and it's a must-not-lose game for Cambridge. They're already 7 points adrift, especially their home games. They've won 1 of their last 10 in League One. I don't know. Exeter are bottom of my expected points table, and Cambridge are actually 17th. So I'm going to back Cambridge here, and I'm going to base it on maths. So I will go with a 2-1 to Cambridge victory, just basing it off an expected points table. Because, like you say, they're not 2 teams I tried to pay too much attention to.
Yeah.
Sorry, fans.
I don't know what it is, but just probably need to talk to their press teams and just make them a bit more interesting. Be like Peterborough, concede a lot of goals and score a lot of goals, and then you'll get more time on this podcast. And then you'll get more time on this podcast. There you go. But that about wraps up this episode of the League One Lowdown. Make sure you hit subscribe, follow on X and on TikTok. And Seb and Jamie will see you for the review show on Monday. But for us, that is it. Goodbye.